Ready? All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 24th business meeting, the Grosse Ile Township Board of Trustees. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:32, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have the entire board present. We'll get into the business tonight, and I'm going to open up with Mr. Malvesto.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure this evening to introduce somebody. I believe that the majority of us will all recognize Russell Beaudry. He's our fire marshal. Hey, Russ, could I get you and Chief Murdoch to come up to the stand? Approximately 3 weeks ago, the Fire Commission had a overwhelming vote to vote and appoint Russ Beaudry to Assistant Fire Chief. A little history on Russ. He's lived on Grosse Ile since 1976. He's been a member of the Volunteer Fire Department since 1996. Gives him 22 years of service to this community. He's been the fire marshal for 10 years. And he's now our assistant fire chief. We've got one heck of a team here, but it's really Russell's night, and so if everybody would give Russ a hand, I'd certainly appreciate it.
I would like to thank
Russ is a pretty humble character. You know, he's short on words, but Russ, go ahead.
I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to serve this township for the last 22 years. I look forward to serving many, many more. Thank you again. I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Russ.
Congratulations, Russ.
Just one little tidbit from my office. This is going to be a strong leader within the department and within the community. It's a pleasure to have Rusty on board, working side by side with me, and I think together we're going to do some good things for the township and for the community as a whole. So I appreciate him being on board.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Mr. Malvesto. Let's begin with, obviously, we can't see. Now we can see.
Oh,
Well,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I just want to ask a quick follow-up question. Do we have a new fire marshal coming up, or? Okay. Oh, all right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'll entertain additions or deletions to tonight's agenda.
Supervisor, I have two additions I'd like to make to the agenda. I'd like to add action item number 5, the appointment of a chief of police for Grosse Ile Township, and item number 6, authorization to establish an eligibility list for police officer with Grosse Ile Township.
Let's do this one at a time. The first would be number 5, appointment for follow-on chief, and motion by Trustee Bletcher. Supervisor will second. Discussion among the board.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Budney.
Where the heck did this come from? We've had no discussion. There's been no vetting. The commission last week said that they wanted to do interviews for this job, which would be proper. I mean, this is a very important job to this township. Some of the board didn't know this was happening. In fact, at this time, I'd like to ask Uta, did you know about this before the meeting?
Actually, the only item we can discuss right now is whether or not to add it to the agenda. Whether or not I knew about this before now is irrelevant.
That's a typical answer. That's good. That's good. That's what I'd expect. I'll take that as a yes.
Jim, insulting me isn't going
I'm
to help.
not insulting you. I'm the one that's been insulted here. Bletcher told some of the board that this was happening, but not all of the board. That's insulting.
If it helps, I did not know, but at the same time, every trustee on this board has the opportunity to add or ask to delete an item from the agenda. It's strictly procedural.
Okay, Udo, okay. Thank you.
So
for
that
your-
Bletcher has a chance to respond.
Well,
Mr.
wait a minute.
President.
I'm not through.
Well, there's more. Thank you.
I would like to know why we're pushing this through without any discussion. I mean, it's just beyond me that we would be filling a job as important as the police chief. And Mark, this is nothing negative on you, the fact that your name is on here. But why we'd be doing this without any not even discussion amongst the board, let alone not having interviews, let alone not following what the commission wants to do, which was clear at their last meeting. And yes, I know it wasn't what Mr. Bletcher wanted, but I'm just stunned by this, that this would be on here like this. We're going to talk for 5 minutes and not really get any information, and we're going to vote on it.
Okay,
That's
just as
doing a disservice to the people of Groseal.
Okay, just to clarify, at any time between now and January 1st, the board can change the decision, so things can change. This is just to start aligning so that we can make plans for the future of the police department.
The commission had a plan to do that.
We chose not to follow the commission's guidance 2 weeks ago. The board is ultimately responsible.
No, sir, we did not. We did not choose not to follow the commission's decision.
A
Select group of people chose, not we as a
majority
board.
of the board means we, the board, opted not to.
You can define it any way you like, sir, but there
Mr.
was no
Malvesto?
discussion.
All right,
Udo, please.
let's get
I'm
this
sorry.
under control.
Brian, keep that handy because you're going to be using it a lot tonight.
As the clerk of the township, I am simply informing you of the procedure. It doesn't make me a bad trustee or a bad official. There is a certain level of procedure that we follow in Robert's Rules of Order. Yeah, you can laugh at me.
I am because
I don't mind.
you follow procedure when you want to.
No, we are at the point of discussing whether or not to add or not add an item to the agenda. When the board votes, whether you are part of the majority vote or the minority vote, I might remind you, it is a board vote. It becomes a board decision, a majority decision. So whether or not you are in the majority or the minority, the decision still holds and you still have to abide by that decision. Let me also remind everybody that commissions in the township serve at the pleasure of the township board. They are not the rule makers. They are not the policy makers. That is what the township electorate have elected the board to do. Commissions act as advisory bodies to the township board. Let me go to our township attorney. When does any commission have the right to make a policy decision on behalf of the township without a vote of the township board?
Township board delegates to that commission or committee the ability to do that.
Thank you.
No, you may not. The board makes the decisions. The commissions advise. To advise the board or is otherwise authorized by ordinance.
The job of any commission that the township has appointed is to provide advice, study, recommendations to the board. And trust me, we take those very valuable. But the board is not obligated to follow any recommendation by any commission of the township. The board uses that information to inform its decisions. It's that way in any form of democratic government. So a commission does not have the power or the right to enforce or create township policy. That is the strict job of the body of the board.
Other comments on adding action item number 5?
I want to make it very.
Ernesto.
I want to make it very clear. This board is comprised of 7 individuals, each with their own thoughts, their own feelings. And this board, 7 people have not discussed this issue. Correct. It is the board's it's a board's responsibility to listen to the suggestions of our commissions. But when we ignore the commission totally and don't talk about what this commission has brought forward, that's an entirely different subject. When 2, 3, or 4 people make the decision to ignore a commission's suggestions, there is a problem. And that's what we're running into today. There is a problem. This board has not discussed it. All the information has not been given to every member on this board. And what's taking place tonight is incorrect. It's a disservice, as Mr. Bundy said, to each and every one of you sitting in the audience, each and every one of you on TV, each and every resident of this township. What we are effectively doing is undermining the authority of a police chief and our police department. Having not gone, I'm not through, Mr. Loftus, please. I don't have a 3-minute limitation. We have not vetted Mr. Warnick, and trust me, I like him. I think a lot of him. But there are ways you go about doing this. And if at the end of the established procedure, Mr. Warnick is our new police chief, that's great. It's entirely acceptable. But to literally ramrod down the throats of this board and this audience and this community, the way it's being done tonight, I'd be ashamed of myself. I couldn't walk the streets tomorrow if I allowed this to happen.
Madam Clerk?
I have to answer this because...
Please, Uta, you don't need to answer me. It's not required.
Mr. Malvesto, as a township board, we are indeed 7 individuals with 7 individual votes. By law, by the Open Meetings Act, we are not allowed to discuss an item with all 7 of us in the same room unless it is at a public meeting.
How about 5? How about 5 people?
We cannot have that.
I'm not talking about that, Ms. O'Connor. I'm talking about a study session.
Mrs. O'Connor has the floor, Mr. Malvesto. Please give her that courtesy.
I'm trying to explain that bringing this item as an agenda item to the board enables the board to discuss the item. Until it is added to the agenda, as a board, we cannot discuss this item.
Then answer me, what information have you been given? Explain to me what information you've been given in making this decision.
Enough. Those in favor of... Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bletcher, it was your motion.
Mr.
My support.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. This legislation was made by my request to Mr. Ream. I asked Mr. Ream today if he could and would be kind enough to present the legislation in a form that we could vote on this today. We have, if my math is correct, 98 days before our chief retires and a new chief takes over effective 12:01 a.m. January 1, 2019. In the interim, we have a chief that is retiring that has to mentor and work with and develop, educate, and train a new chief. We have the deputy chief that is the logical promotion to fill that vacancy. The commission weighed and considered the applications of 3 individuals several months ago for the deputy chief position. To say that the commission made a bad choice or that there is a better choice ignores the choice that they made some 4 months ago. I think everybody in this room and certainly on this board should understand and recognize that Mark Warnick is an excellent candidate to be the next chief. In fact, there is not one better. There was no other intimation by the commission or anyone present that we should have someone other than Mark Warnick tonight be considered. What are the alternatives? We had 3 people that applied for the deputy chief before. We have 1 deputy chief now who in 98 days will be the next chief. We have another problem in that, assuming that Mark is confirmed tonight, we now have a vacancy in the deputy chief position. So Chief Porcelli, who has had a wonderful career here and has done a number of great things for the township, is in the position of having to train his successor, and then he has to bring on board with the commission a deputy chief to be trained within 98 days. And this comes in a backdrop of Mark having been the deputy chief for less than half a year. Let's throw in a third variable, and that's the addition of the lieutenant position. So Chief Porcelli is going to be wearing 4 hats. He is going to be the chief of police for the next 98 days. He's going to train a deputy chief. He's going to then train a lieutenant. And the deputy chief is going to have to work with the lieutenant as well. 98 days. That's the time we have, and the clock is ticking. Now, I would look at it and suggest to you respectfully that Chief Porcelli has done an excellent job bringing people forward and training them and working with them. There is no other alternative within the department based on the line of succession that we have that makes any sense. I said it at the meeting, and I'll say it again. I think it is a slap in the face of Chief Porcelli and Deputy Chief Warnick to do anything other tonight than to confirm Mark as the next chief. Let the process go forward. Let them do their job. We have 98 days, and that's it.
Supervisor?
Thank you, Mr. Bletcher. Mr. Budney.
I don't know why the train ends at 98 days. I do not understand that. Maybe because you haven't been in business or done any management, you don't understand. When you have an important job, you look at what you have. There's no 98 days here. If the people from within cannot get it done, you look from without. That's a possibility. You're saying within. Maybe we have to look outside. I don't know. I'd rely on the commission to come up with that. But having it done doesn't have to be done in 98 days. Quite frankly, you could have the deputy chief act if it were not done by the time Chief Porcelli leaves. There's no magic to doing that. That it just isn't there, Carl.
If I may respond briefly, you have a chief that has produced a department that has had the 7th safest community in Michigan for 7 of the last 9 years. Let me clarify that. He is leaving in 98 days. He's done. He's gone. We lose that talent. We lose those skills. He's on to a new career. That's the urgency.
And there's something to that. There's certainly something to that. The problem is, what if Joe?
Let me just jump in here.
Okay.
The what if.
Okay. Yeah. We'll get to that when we have that.
If we add it to the agenda.
I apologize.
All right, that's okay. That would be the appropriate time to continue the discussion and debate. All right. With that,
but I just want to make one thing. I want to be very clear that your decision was based on the decision of your commission, the commission that you're the liaison to.
I don't understand the question.
You said that you were depending on the decision that the promotion to deputy chief was based on your commission, and you have every faith in the decision of your commission, and that moving up to police chief would be the next logical step based on your commission.
What I said was that the commission had recommended the promotion.
And you respected that.
And I thought that was the correct choice then. I think
okay,
it's
I just want to be very clear that you're following the lead of your commission.
We have an item that is up for a vote, and I have to say, just in defense of a board member who asked to add something to the agenda and the protests that came from Mr. Malvesto, any other trustee could also have added to the agenda to turn this into a study session or at any other time. So this is just what happened today. And I would say that we need to vote on this before we discuss this any further.
all right. Let's bring it a vote to bring it to the table. And I'll just start with a voice vote. If it's close, we'll go roll call. Those in favor of adding action item number 5,
I would prefer
designating
a roll call.
since you've asked for a roll call vote, designating Deputy Chief Wernick as a successor Chief of Police starting 1 January 2019. We'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Malvesto.
I'm opposed.
Trustee Budney.
A.
Mr. Treasurer.
Absolutely.
Supervisor, aye. Madam Clerk.
Aye.
Trustee Nelson.
Absolutely.
Trustee Bletcher.
Aye.
Okay, the vote goes 5-2. That will be added to tonight's agenda. And we have a second recommendation to add to tonight's agenda. Mr. Bletcher.
That is adding the authorization to establish an eligibility list for a police officer with Groseal Township. It is not a hiring request. It is an eligibility list that allows us to go out, advertise, and solicit, so that in the event that there is a vacancy that needs to be filled by one or more of these promotions, we have the ability to go out and list and request applicants, solicitation of applicants for that position.
I will support that motion. Any discussion on authorization to begin the hire process?
Just one question of clarification. Would you still want this if your previous addition were voted down? Or does this kind of coincide with that? In other words, would number 5 have to be approved in order for number 6 to go forward?
No, sir. We have the chief of police who is retiring.
That's all I wanted. It was separate.
No,
it's separate.
they are separate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions on the authorization to establish an eligibility list? I got to make that distinction. With none, those in favor of authorizing the establishment of an eligibility list for a police officer, adding this to the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Okay, with none offered.
No, I'm
sorry.
Please don't cut me off. I have an addition, please.
Proceed.
I'm going to read the action.
Make the addition.
Make the addition. The addition I'd like to make to the agenda this evening is for the promotion of Sergeant Ken Pellin to the position of lieutenant.
Support.
Okay, motion by Trustee Malvesto, seconded by Trustee Budney. Discussion among the board?
Mr. Supervisor, the question before the board in part is not just the filling of a position, but who is going to have a fair amount of involvement in the filling of that position. We have an unprecedented opportunity and difficulty here in that we have potentially 3 positions that are going to be opening up, and we're going to be moving into that. The management position of chief also would reasonably include having significant input into who he would recommend as both the deputy chief and the lieutenant. And I think it is premature at this point to appoint a lieutenant on that basis. I think that whoever the next chief is, he or she, if we hire from within or without, ought to have some input into that.
I asked that. Was this the wish of the current police commission to appoint approve the promotion of Sergeant Pellin to lieutenant?
Absolutely, yes. On a 4-1 vote last.
Then why would you give this any less weight? Bear any less weight? You seem to think that the action of your commission in the approval of a police chief was reason to bring it forward.
Refresh my memory here. 2 weeks ago, did we not have the same action item and didn't approve it for the same reasons?
That is correct, Mr. Supervisor.
In fact, what Mr. Bletcher said at that meeting was he wanted to take it off, to take it back to his commission to revisit. It went back to the commission, it was revisited, and they asked that it come back today.
And at one point...
you're putting words in the liaison's mouth.
I'm not putting any words in anybody's mouth. That's what happened.
And in fact, the commission, for the second time in 2 weeks, determined that they believed on a 4-1 vote that they should fill that position at this time. And we have had vacancies that are now coming up. And it's a question, are we going to start filling these positions in reverse order? Where I come from, you start at the top and you work your way down when you have that kind of a vacancy. You start with a chief. We're going to have a new chief. The new chief ought to be able to have the significant input into who the deputy chief is going to be,
Well, in
as
98
opposed
days,
to us, and as who the lieutenant should be.
That's one way of doing it. It's not a necessity by any
We are
means.
again discussing an action item before it has been
yeah,
added
again.
to the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I-
Will you be requesting a roll call vote? Because any further discussion.
What I'm going to ask is it improper to list the qualifications of this candidate?
It is improper at this point. Right now, we're just deciding whether we're going to consider it as an action item.
Is there any reason I can't bring this back 2 weeks from now
There's no reason you can't bring it back 2 weeks from now.
and 4 weeks from now?
And you could, hey, we're here at every meeting.
So we're going to ignore the wishes of a commission.
Again,
No,
all right.
We don't
let's,
know. Nobody's voted yet.
I'm closing the debate. It's time to vote on this so we can move on to tonight's business. Would you like a roll call vote, Mr. Malvesto? I will.
Yes, I would.
Okay. The item on the table is the promotion of Sergeant Pellin to lieutenant per the recommendation of the Police Commission. Mr. Malvesto.
I'm in favor.
Trustee Budney.
Yes.
Mr. Treasurer? No. Supervisor, no. Madam Clerk?
No.
Trustee Nelson?
No.
Trustee Bletcher?
No.
I'd like to add in that if we bring this item back, it be after the new chief has been appointed, and then I'd welcome to add this to
Miss
the
O'Connor,
agenda.
please. Enough of yours. You're quick to respond.
All right, the discussion on this is over. Let's move on to, and this is going to take probably even longer. Those in favor? Okay, we've added 2 items to the agenda.
Other item?
Yep, I didn't close it yet.
No, yeah, I know. Thank you. Yes, I would request that a discussion item be added to this agenda to discuss the personnel movement from the police department to the DPS.
I'm sorry, second.
We have a motion, a second, to add discussion of the movement of the animal control officer from under police to Department of Public Services.
The just a history of why I'm asking for this. There was a personnel action taken. And what the whole purpose of this is to find out why that action was taken. It seems to be the particulars of it seem to be somewhat of a secret. The generalities have been given to me, but not the particulars. Not the particulars. And so I asked that this be put on as a study session. It was for 1 hour on the agenda, and then it was taken off to be replaced by an evaluation that was canceled today. So I'd like it, since we did that, and it is an item that cannot be discussed in a closed session. Therefore, in order for the board to discuss it, I would like it to be put on the agenda as a discussion item. That's the history of it.
Well, I'm going to default to the advice we got this afternoon from our attorney, and it expands into a discussion of personnel issues that are not. There were more ramification were we to have the closed session that we couldn't orchestrate in time to do it properly. The discussion is going to get into personnel matters that I'm not comfortable sharing with the public.
Well,
so with that, I'm going to recommend against it.
Well, that's.
I appreciate you wanting to add this to today's agenda, but we all received an email earlier today that hinted that the township attorney had concerns about having the discussions we were planning to have in either both or closed session. I think to put it on tonight's agenda, none of us are prepared, which is one of the reasons that Mr. Budney and Mr. Malvesto complained, is that we don't all have the same information, which is probably true. And so I think that we need, and I said this in my reply to the email, is that we have to count on our manager and our attorney to outline a path that we can follow so that we do not expose the township to litigation because of anything that might occur in a discussion of these two interrelated topics.
When can we
And
expect
so
that?
I think it's prudent for us to wait until they have found a path that we can take to do this together as a board.
When can we expect that? Or when would you expect that?
Well, since the decision was made today, the advice was given today, I would imagine that they will come up with a plan within the next 2 weeks. But I don't think anyone is ready for this today.
I'll petition Mr. Assorti to give us some guidelines if we want to add it to the October 22nd meeting as a study session or closed session, but I want to know what guidelines we can work under. We're getting deep into personnel matters, and those are, in my world, those are close hold items.
Well, we're just asking the township manager why he did what he did. And, okay, that's fine. Oh, I understand what you're saying, and we
Okay.
don't need to drag this on. Tom, I would like to talk to you immediately after the meeting to find out what the heck is going on here.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor of adding a discussion item at the end of tonight's meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
The motion does not carry. Other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? With none offered, those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda stands as amended. With that, open it to public comment, limited to tonight's agenda items.
Comment, sir.
I'll recognize Trustee Malvesto.
Tom Malvesto, 8049 Berkshire Drive. I am doing this as a resident. I want you to know just who you've turned down this evening. Sergeant Ken Pellin has served since 1992, 26 years on this police department. He's been a sergeant since 2015 to present. He spent 1 year in probation, a probationary period, before he was finally a sergeant. Sergeant Pellin has over 20 years with the DARE program in our schools, keeping kids out of harm's way of drugs that are in their current life. He's got 15 years with Stepping Stones, working with impaired children and adults. He administers all grants for all the downriver communities. He handles all school safety drills, including the training, the implementation, and the scheduling of such. He volunteers for many additional tasks over and above what he's been assigned to him, and he completes them all. Over the past 9 months, Sergeant Pellin has been going to command school, staff and command school, and he'll graduate this October 5th. He has a 99% average in his class. He's number 3 in the class out of 44 participants. He organizes the police open houses. He's been twice recommended by the police commission for a promotion to lieutenant. Once on August 14th, thereabouts, on a 5-1 vote, and again on the, whatever the date was, on a 4-1 vote. The only dissenting vote came from the liaison, Mr. Bletcher. It was once told to me, because I was voting in opposition to somebody who was going to be, they wanted to make a manager in our township, that if I voted in opposition, I should no longer be on that commission. I heeded that word at that time, and to this day it haunts me, the decision I made. I feel that Liaison Bletcher is actually coming from a very biased and prejudiced feelings as far as Sergeant Pellin goes. I don't believe you should any longer be the liaison on that said commission. But then that's your decision. But this is the man that you just slapped in the face and told him he's not good enough to be promoted from sergeant to a... Don't shake your head at me and grin. Yeah, well, don't shake your head at me. Keep your impressions to yourself. Just sit there in your embarrassment.
All right. Other public comment on tonight's agenda items?
Mr. I will not let that be unaddressed. I was not grinning.
I was speaking as a resident. I have a right to express my
sure
And
do.
opinion.
she has the right to respond.
I have a right to respond. You have now exposed Sergeant Pelland to a review and a critique that is wholly inappropriate. Because as far as I'm concerned, none of this had anything to do with the individual in place. All of this has to do with putting together a line of progression in a department where the chief is retiring and there will be a new order of command. You have made this a personal review of Sergeant Pelland, not this board. And I wrote this to you earlier today. I have no doubt that Sergeant Pelland is qualified and has committed himself to this community. I have worked with him for these last 20 years. He has guided my children. He has guided the children through our schools. But this is not about an individual. This is about a chain of command. And the second thing you have done is you have attacked another member of this board in an inappropriate forum. And I'm now forced also to point out that while you lauded a certain individual for receiving promotions from the commission, this individual most recently turned down a promotion to deputy chief. So the board is looking for people who want to serve, and
Mr. Loftus, I'm leaving this meeting.
Drive carefully.
You're an embarrassment to this entire township.
Me or her?
oh. But at least I stand for the integrity of the township and the administrative process.
All right, let's keep this in order, or he won't be the last one to leave. Mr. Anderson. Pardon?
He wanted to speak.
Mr. Anderson, introduce yourself and.
Yes, I'm resident Paul Anderson. I live at 26042 Martin Lane, and I've been on Grosse Ile since I was 4. First off, let me say, I didn't know you guys had so much fun here. Seriously. And I'm going to have to do this more often. But I'd just like to address some of the things that have come up so far. And we haven't even got into the discussion items, but the ones that, apply to the police commission, which I'm a member of. At our meeting, we specifically asked, is there a specific urgency to have this matter decided tonight, or can we follow the procedure that we've followed in the 26 years I've been on the commission for every basic appointment? And we looked and said, can we get this done in a week or 2? And we all agreed on the commission we can get it done in 2 weeks. And we actually had 3 board members at that meeting. We had Mr. Malvesta, Mr. Budney, Mr. Bletcher.
And Mr. Nelson.
I'm sorry, Jim. And none of them said, no, we want, it would really help the process if we had a decision by today, because I'm sure as a board or as a commission we could have done something that would have provided the input that you folks needed. But it makes, I don't want to get into a thing here about whether we followed procedure, didn't follow procedure, should have done something, and we didn't do something. We asked, and we could have found as a commission probably that evening if you said we needed something that evening. But there's also a value to the process, to provide the precedent for all the future commissions that we follow a process before we take action. And what we usually do is we have interviews, we talk to everyone, we vote, and we submit it to you. Now, in this situation, had we submitted something to you you didn't like, you got the right to turn it down. You know, we all realize that. But, you know, there seems to be some drama going on here that maybe I haven't seen on TV. Like I said, it's very interesting. But I just want to make the point that as a police commission who's sat for many years, Carl's been on it longer than I have. Bob Zalasko, Mike Jarecki, and Joe Dixon, who couldn't be here, you know, we would have come up with a recommendation if we were told you needed it today. But we were not given that direction. As you said, Uta, we serve at the pleasure of the Township Board. And if you guys need something or you have feelings, you need to bring them to our attention. We had 3 board members the other night. It was a perfect time to say something that, hey guys, we need something for Monday. That didn't happen. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Other comments from the public present on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Jarecki. I live at 28214 Elba Drive. I've been a Groseal resident for probably off and on 45 years. I recently joined the police commission, and I'm very concerned. I've been holding leadership jobs for the last 30 years with, you know, teams of employees of, you know, between 300 and 500 people. Last 2 jobs are CEO jobs, and I hire and fire a lot of people. I deal with a lot of lawyers, and I see there being a little bit of an issue here. I see the township and the taxpayers of the township being unnecessarily exposed to risk that could be avoided. The township board created the commission and the policies within the commission as to what we do and what we don't do. You've followed those procedures or policies. Last 2 hires, I believe, Joey, Bill Barron, 2 outstanding, you know, chiefs of police. And now to circumvent that for no really good reason makes absolutely no sense to me. And if you do make a mistake, and you do, and we get sued as a community, and you didn't follow your own processes and procedures that you put in place, we're going to be at extreme risk. Now, I have had that happen to me in business numerous times, and that's why you have handbooks, that's why you have policies, that's why you have procedures. But we weren't allowed to follow that this time around, and I just don't understand why. It's very concerning to me, and I'm sure it's very concerning to the whole community, because, quite frankly, we can avoid these type of problems. We should try to avoid it. You got a fiduciary responsibility to keep us out of risk of being sued. Now, my other concern is the morale of the police force. You know, there's a lot of individuals there that think they should be considered for this position. That happens in business all the time. And all of a sudden, not to consider these folks, vet them through the process, set criteria, put weight to that criteria, interview the people, and then explain to them why they didn't get it or why they weren't recommended. That's the way you do it. That's the way the rest of the world works. And why we're circumventing that makes no sense to me. And by the way, how about even Mark? Mark now will have to live, if he becomes new chief of police, the fact that it was a backdoor agreement rammed down the community's throat. It circumvented the commission, so on and so forth. And how does that make him feel individually? I think Mark probably would have been our recommendation, quite frankly.
All right, Mike, I got purposes of time. I'm keeping everybody to 3 minutes. Excellent comments. Let me throw something back. The commission can review our decision and make a contrary recommendation, which we will certainly review.
30 more seconds.
Okay. I've got to keep.
Okay. So the closing comment was our recommendation for deputy chief. First recommendation was Mr. Pelham. It was very close, by the way. Mark's an outstanding officer, but that was our recommendation. Now, the other thing is, there's a big difference between deputy chief and chief of police. Big difference between CEO and COO, okay? And to say that just because you're deputy chief makes you the best person for chief of police isn't necessarily so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarecki.
I did have one question, Mr. Supervisor. Mike, can you come back up? You indicated or stated about a backdoor agreement. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is circumventing the process and trying to ram it down our throat when we haven't even discussed it as a commission. That's what I mean by that, Carl.
That's fair. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
At the risk of getting more ire from my former friends, let me ask you, when we appoint somebody as deputy chief, we do so with the belief that in the case the chief cannot perform his duties, the deputy chief steps in his place. That's the role of a deputy. So you're telling me now that you believe a deputy is not the person to step in when the chief is unavailable. That's contradictory to me.
Maybe on a temporary basis, yes. But does that automatically make them the best chief of all the people, that employees or other candidates? No. Doesn't happen anywhere I know.
And
I don't understand chain of command.
You can review our decision, and if the commission thinks we erred, make a recommendation. We will certainly consider it. Other comments from the public present? Who's that? Mr. Zelasco.
Bob Zelasco, Blauvelt. Mr. Bletcher makes 98 days sound like a 2-week vacation. 98 days is a third of a year. And you're absolutely right. I've got a chief of police over here. He's been in for 9 years. Out of his last 9 years, he's brought the safest community in Michigan award to this township. He has won the respect of his people in helping him do that. He has given us a police department that other communities only wish they had. And yet, he hasn't even got an opportunity to input this process of who his successor should be. To promote a police chief right now without a plan, which includes timing, he needs to assess these people in these positions. He needs to mentor them, and he can handle it. He's not overburdened. Heck, we can't even fill the other position for him. That's been blocked. We can't even put that person in there. He's not even part of the process. It would behoove me as a commissioner not to value his opinion on who the next chief of police should be. And he hasn't even been brought into a discussion. He's been completely overrode here and thrown to the side. As far as this commission that brought you this decision, there's over 100 years of management experience. They've been dealing with people for years. They brought you a man that is more than qualified and has earned this position. Power and authority are very important things, and you've been given that up there. I've seen it misused maybe 2 times in my career. And I went to the gentleman's retirement party that had done it, and I asked him, Glenn, I said, you had a fantastic career. Is there anything that you could change if you would go back? And he says, yeah, Bob, I'll confide in you. He says, there is. I says, what's that? He says, I made a decision that wrecked someone's career. Out of anger and haste, I made a decision and I wrecked their career. I have to live with that. I have to sleep with it. It's something I think about every day. It won't go away, and if I could do it over again, I would. I misused my power and authority, and now I'm suffering for it. When this meeting is over, and you people all consult with yourselves, I hope you're proud of what you did, because quite frankly, I, as a voter and a taxpayer on this island, I'm ashamed of what you're doing. You're promoting a police chief on the spot on theory. The commission promotes on performance. I haven't had a chance to see these people perform yet. I haven't got any input from my chief of police. But yet you're going to overrule the commission and make that decision on your own tonight. I hope you know what you did. You have wrecked somebody's career. You have to live with that.
That will be enough. You've exceeded your 3 minutes, and I'm getting real tired of having fingers pointed in an accusatory, combative nature. Mr. Zelasco, thank you for your comments.
And thank you, and I'm tired of listening to your rubber hammer up there, too.
Other comments from the public present? We go, Mr. Heil.
Somebody else was already up.
No, wait. Go ahead, sir. No, you go on. Go on. Thank you. I didn't mean to step in front of you.
No, you didn't see me. I was back there. Hello, my name's Dan O'Reilly. I'm a newer resident on Groseal. Only have been here about 2 years. I actually went to the police commission meeting last week. I did see many of you there, actually, and I'm just going to point out I'm confused because while there, two different votes happened. The first was that they were going to discuss, right, and the commission was going to create a plan of action on what to do for the police chief, right, the next in line. I'm not seeing that. Sir, you said, I want to vote on it tonight. That completely contradicts what the commission stated, which I was present at. My grandfather was there too. And what you also voted on. I'm not trying to, but you were right there. So, and then secondly, what was agreed on by the commission was the promotion of the lieutenant. So, and that was completely just denied. So I am, as a resident, that's concerning, alarming. I don't understand what went wrong in this process, and I get it. I don't understand it all, but I went to it, and now I'm here, right, to follow up, and it's not following what we saw. So I guess I just don't know why. There's a commission that agrees to do something collectively, and then someone comes up and circumvents that altogether. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Heil.
Bill Heil. I live on East River Road. I've tried very hard tonight to listen to what everybody has had to say. And I think that I can truthfully say that everybody here is sincere in some kind of a belief that they have a position that is right. And I'm not here with these remarks to challenge that exactly. But there has been a grain of truth in every opinion I've listened to. And so the rhetorical question at hand is, what makes things work when this is the circumstance? What oils the gears to make the engine of progress move forward? Basically, it's a willingness to communicate, a willingness to be considerate of one another, and a willingness to follow procedures. I'm not convinced that any of that is taking place as I'm listening to this, and I'm encouraging you to think about that. I think we would be better off if you do that. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. More public comment. Mr. Lemoyne.
Good evening, Steve Lemoyne, 8410 Hampton. I think for me this is the first 8:30 and we haven't approved the agenda yet, or just barely with discussion. But I just want to take this moment, because I don't know how long I can be here till tonight, to thank the chief. Over the time we've had some good conversations. You've inspired me to keep serving. As long as I'm on Groseal, I'll keep serving. I'm on the zoning board, the planning commission. I put my name in the hat for Groseal Township School Board. I just want to keep giving. And if I'm not here later, I just want to say thank you to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lemoyne. Other comments? All right, if none offered, I'll close public comment. We'll move on to tonight's, and thank you everyone for your comments. Tonight's consent agenda, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Brian. Consent agenda 18, excuse me, been idle too long. Consent agenda 18-050, which include the minutes of the September 10th, 2018 regular meeting, check register dated through September 21st, 2018. Approval to process and distribute payments through October 12th, 2018. Approval of a closed session minutes on open space purchase. And approval of closed session minutes on TPOAM contract negotiations.
Support.
Okay, moved by Treasurer, seconded by Trustee Budney to approve the consent agenda as published. Comments from the board? None offered. Those in favor of approving the consent agenda as published, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered. That will stand approved. Now on tonight's action items, I'll start with Mr. Bletcher.
Mr. Supervisor, it is with great regret that we have been presented with a retirement notice by our Chief of Police. And Chief Porcerelli has indicated after 34 and a half years as a Groseal police officer that he is going to be leaving the department and moving on to other pastures. I don't know that they'll be greener because, frankly, he has made the community a very safe place, a very good place, and I can't imagine a better place for Joe to try and work his magic. He's been a member of this community for a very, very long time, grew up here, has lived here, been a very, very important part of Groseal Township and a leader within the Groseal Police Department. Joe started out, as I recall, with the Metro Parks, came over here and has worked his way up through the ranks and has done an outstanding job with everything that he has done. He has been an invaluable source of information. He has led the township in technology. We look at a couple of small things like license plate readers that have had a tremendous impact on the lives of numerous people. Many people first thought that when they were proposed that Chief Porcerelli and the police department were turning this into 1984 and it was going to be a police state. It's been anything since that. The license plate readers have been a very, very powerful tool in apprehending some of the criminals that have preyed upon the island. And they've also been a great exculpatory tool where we have had people make false allegations about their spouses, violations of PPO orders, as well as other matters that have occurred on the bridge, including a tragedy. And Chief Porcerelli spearheaded that. Chief Porcerelli has brought this township again into its position as literally one of the safest communities in the country. Joe has done that by focusing on training, focusing on personnel, focusing on education. We have a number of life-saving awards that have been handed out to our officers. I believe that we have 2 officers that have had 3 life-saving awards and 3 that have 2 and others that have 1. And that's because of Joe's focus on education, hiring the right people, bringing them in with the right tools. I regret that we are losing Joe to another career, but I think we all in this room and in this community owe Joe Porcerelli a tremendous debt of gratitude and thanks for not only a job well done, but for doing the great job that he's been doing and making Groseal as safe as it is. And I would encourage everyone to stand and recognize Chief Porcerelli.
Oh, we're not done, Chief. I've got a proclamation. May I read the?
Please, Mr. Supervisor.
You made the motion, and we don't have, and I'll support it. Okay, so now we're moving according to procedure, and included in that was a proclamation, and I'm going to do my best reading voice. Please, Chief Joseph Porcerelli. Whereas,
Mr. Supervisor, could we have him come to the microphone first?
Chief, please, Chief. Because there's a lot of detail here. It won't be that long, Chief. You haven't suffered enough. Okay, whereas Joseph Porcelli has served over 33 years as a dedicated employee of the Township of Grosse Ile, and whereas during his employment with the Township of Grosse Ile, Joseph Porcelli has served in various positions, which include patrolman, sergeant, patrol lieutenant, detective lieutenant, and the highest honor of police chief, and whereas Chief Porcelli acquired the following certifications: state licensed EMT, State of Michigan certified accident pedestrian reconstructionist, and whereas Chief Porcelli arranged for the installation of the first license plate recognition system in the Midwest, organized the first deer culling and coyote culling together in the state, and as Chief of Police, 7 out of 9 years, Grosse Ile was recognized as the safest community. And whereas Chief Porcelli has provided tremendous protection and support to the Township of Grosse Ile in a professional and conscientious manner throughout his tenure with the Township of Grosse Ile, and whereas the Township Board of Trustees regretfully accept the retirement of Chief Joseph Porcelli. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this date, September 24th, 2018, Township of Grosse Ile does honor and thank Police Chief Joseph Porcelli for his commitment and dedication to our island community. And I can only add the nuts and bolts stuff, Joe. As the Chief Budgeting Officer, you ground your pencils down to the erasers, cutting every unnecessary nickel, moving expenses around, getting that budget under control. With a little help from Ruth and Ann, when the federal audit came in, 0 errors. I don't know if that ever happens, because I know Ann was scared to death when the federal auditors showed up. Not an error to be found. That's beyond the visible dedication. That's just hard work. So, Chief,
I wouldn't do well in jail, so that's
well, what can I say? Chief, thanks. I guess.
I wasn't.
The microphone is yours, sir.
And thank you. I wasn't, prepared with anything to actually come up. Obviously, it has been a wonderful ride here for the almost 34 years. I can't imagine I have the most seniority of any officer that's ever worked out here. An opportunity came up, when it's time to go. Hopefully, I'm still in the process, but I'll be going to the Detroit Police Department. And it's an inside job. It's with admin, and something came up, and it's just time. But, I have to thank the people. I have to thank everyone here. The commission's been so supportive, but I have to say it is definitely a collaborative effort. We talk about the safest community in Michigan. We all have a part in that. It's not just me that's doing that, obviously, and I would never take credit for it. The people out here have been so supportive with everything, not just our millages, just supporting the police department, understanding our community policing program, our proactive way we do things out here. The people I work with, I absolutely love. There's just no doubt about it. I love all of them. It's just, when it's time to go, it's time to go. So hopefully everything will work out in that end. And I guess, again, I wasn't prepared, but thanks to everyone. Thank you to the community. Again, it's been a wonderful
thank you, Joe.
33 and a half years. It really has.
Yeah. Thanks,
thank you, Joe.
So thank you all again.
I guess the formality remains. Those in favor of accepting with regret the pending retirement of Chief Joseph Porcelli, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thanks again, Chief.
The only thing that I'd add to that, would it do any good if we said no? Would he stay? Nay.
Probably one of the many certificates you'll be able to hang on your wall. All right, with that, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, I will read this motion that the Recreation Director would like to revise Chapter 67-35, Article 9 of the Festival Commission. Members from currently 9 to 11 members, along with the remaining commission, to the Festival and Community Arts Commission. I said renaming the commission to the Festival and Community Arts Commission.
Okay, the motion is there.
I'll support it.
Seconded by Treasurer. And you want to have Ms. O'Farrell?
Sure.
Convince us that this needs to happen?
Well, I'm the happy bus, so just a couple of things. The reason for the request, and it's pretty self-explanatory. What we've been doing over the last year, and we are increasing our events for our community. We don't have a mall. We don't have things for kids to go to, the race cars, those types of things. So the job of recreation and festival is to provide those events for our community, because we are small, of course, and that's what we have been putting together for the last year and 4 months that I've been here. A couple other facts. Festival is a working commission. A working commission is people that physically get out there. All of you have attended all the events that we've had on the island. You'll see Chad leading the pack, along with the rest of Rec Commission and Festival joining forces. And that's what we do. We provide that environment for our community, for programs, events. Paint the Town Red is coming right at us. So that's what this commission does. Commissioners are volunteers, so they do not add any fiscal impact at all to the budget. They actually help the budget. They help our department and our general fund. By volunteering your time, we're not physically paying out another person to set up, tear down, take down trash, all those types of things that go into event planning. And I've been doing event planning for 20 years. And without these types of commissions, whether they're 5 or 11, the more the better, in my opinion. All communities have festivals, every one of them, downriver to Cleveland, where I've been. They have special events and a need for volunteers. The voters approved the recreation millage in August, which in return says the community would like us to continue these events. They're pleased with the events. They like them. I get calls. Thank you for doing what you do for our community. And also, more events have been planned for our community in 2017 and 18, and more to come in 19. CRC and Festival is working with the Rotary, DDA, and other community groups to bring more events to this community so our residents have somewhere to go to take their children and their grandchildren. That is our job. Voting down this piece of legislation would not be beneficial to our community, as we have over 9 township commissions, airport, bicycle, community rec, DDA, festival, fire, planning, police, and public service, all comprised of volunteers. They are volunteers on these commissions. We also have 3 township communities: beautification, airport, greenway, open space. We have Island Organization, Boar's Head Festival, Gyra, GISA, Educational Foundation, Garden Club, Herb Society, Music Boosters, Nature and Land, Historical Society, Kiwanis, and Rotary, just to name a few. All comprised of volunteers. And I think our community behind us knows what these people do, because I certainly do. Because I am friends with almost at least one person on those, and they are volunteers. And without those volunteers, where would we be? Nowhere. So I thank all of the volunteers in those organizations. The Halloween Hangar event is a fundraiser to help reduce the debt of the community rink. And I know it's been brought up that we must be financially responsible. And that's exactly what I'm doing, along with my festival and CRC commission. So to put on an event of that caliber, including Island Fest, which we've all been to, you need volunteers, not 2. If I could have 20, I'd ask for 20, but don't want to get too out of hand. We have $39,000 worth of debt that was left in the rec department when I got here. And the goal is to eliminate that debt. And the only way to eliminate debt is to have fundraisers, event planning, sponsorships, and those types of things. And that's what these 2 commissions, CRC and Festival, are looking into and working hard to eliminate those types of things from the recreation budget. And over the last 3 years, Mr. Novak has taken the responsibility as the chairman, well, just recently the chairman. And for the last 2 years, Festival has shown a profit because we are being financially responsible to our community. We have not taken money from the general fund. We are supporting Festival through the efforts of the Festival Commission and CRC. The number of acting commissioners should not matter in this case at all. I am just requesting that we move to 11, and I would like to change the name, as we are not just a festival commission, we are also a community events commission as well. Any questions?
I just want to make a.
Go ahead.
I don't think we needed a hard sell. We all appreciate what Festival Commission has done, how it's changed direction in the last several years, and what I've noticed, what didn't get any traction previously, but with you and with Mr. Novak and our new DDA director, the synergy, you two working together, all sorts of new events, all sorts of things happening on Macomb Street throughout the community. Just a busy time, so I see a sea change in the offerings, what's going on to just make the community better. So if you need 2 more people to continue or accelerate that progress, count on me.
And as the Festival Commission, just an update, we did have 4 people apply. We had 2 resign, or I'm sorry, 1 resign, Ann. And the 4 people that the Festival Commission interviewed, and I was part of that, were the most outstanding people I have ever met. They are there for a reason. They want to help. They want to contribute. And they're not asking for a dime. So it's a little hard to turn people down that really want to help our community.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. I mean, I heard everything you said, and I agree with it. And you're right about volunteers, but they don't have to be commission members to volunteer. Why would that's, and if I'm not mistaken, if we make this 11, it'll be the largest commission in the township.
Can I handle that, Kim?
Sure.
And can I ask the rest of my question? So I don't understand. I mean, we have volunteers on the DPS. We don't fix water mains. They have volunteers at the police. They don't write tickets. Volunteers in the fire. They don't fight fires. The commission isn't necessarily the ones that do the work. And so I'm a little confused as to what I'm getting is you're saying if they're not put on the commission, they won't volunteer?
No, that's not true at all.
Because no, that's what I'm asking. Because why do they have to be on the commission?
It helps with our quorum, our attendance.
With your what?
The quorum, the quorum. So we have quorum going forward.
I mean, quorum. There's
I know,
no matter how many there are. There's a quorum.
I'm not going to go. And if you remember, when the Recreation Commission and Water's Edge Commission became one commission. Do you remember how many we had then? I mean, so it's not like it wasn't done in the past. But you're right, volunteers are really hard to come by. Everybody says, oh, we're going to help, we're going to do this. But when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, it's the commissioners that actually come through with their
Well, I know, like,
people. So
prior to Kim getting there, the Rec Commission was 9, and they didn't do anything.
But look what they've done since Kim's got here.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what they've done. We never really hear what they've done. We only hear about the events. We don't hear the business end
recreation?
of rec. We don't really hear the.
We have financial reports now. During our CRC.
No. I meant as far as how much the commission members actually participate in the events, as far as setting up, putting down, whatever.
They do.
I'm
Absolutely,
not familiar
they do.
with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Having served on the Festival Commission in the past, Jim, it's also that on the commission, different people on the commission actually fulfill specific roles within the organization of the festival. So it's oftentimes that you'll have one commissioner in charge of, say, the car show, one person in charge of entertainment and so forth. And also depending on their professional obligations, they're not always able to be at all the different meetings.
Correct.
So it's kind of an exceptional commission in the fact that they really do get a lot of professional assistance from people who are volunteering. I remember our TV and lights and music guy, right? I mean, that was his business, but he volunteered it for the commission. So I think that makes that commission a little bit different from some of our other commissions. There is no professional staff to do the things that they might need done. Like DPS will have a department and staff to fall back on. Planning, all of the other commissions have people professionally in the role that they have oversight over. But in the Festival Commission, they are providing oversight, but they are also actually many times doing.
So you're comfortable that if you add 2, you add 4, you add 16, the people that are at it are going to work. You're familiar. Okay, thank you.
We will be looking for a new festival chief next year, so. Not to rain on your parade, Joe.
we haven't accepted anything yet, Chad.
Any other questions?
I think Nelson would be good for that.
Thanks, Kim.
Sure.
Well, I guess everything's answered. Those in favor of revising Chapter 67-35, Article 9, Festival Commission members from currently 9 to 11 total, along with renaming the commission to Festival and Community Events Commission. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Now, none offered. This takes effect, 30 days after the minutes are posted or published? Whether it's a statutory requirement. So, anyway, get your names and we'll bring them aboard. All right, Mr. Budney.
Thank you, Brian. Lorinda, please come up. Like to put a motion before the board to award lowest proposal for the Dallas Drive water main replacement to Campo Brother, Inc., in the amount of $47,535 based on the recommendation of the DPS Commission.
Okay, moved by Trustee Buddy, seconded by Treasurer Van Oss.
Before I let Lorinda go on, just a very quick overview of this. This Dallas Drive, especially one address on Dallas Drive, has had numerous water main breaks. And just like we had at the last meeting, handling the Park Lane between Bridge and Meridian, this is just another one that has had enough breaks that we feel we should fix it now. And that is what this is all about, another water main break.
Water main replacement.
Yes. And it's 350 feet we're replacing, so it's not just a little 20-foot break.
No.
This is 350 feet and doing all the necessary things with it.
So what's the existing structure? Is it ductile iron, cast iron?
Yep. Like everything that breaks. I don't know that we've had any of our new pipe that we've put down over these years break. It's all every time we talk water main break, it's the old ductile. Yep.
Okay.
But yes, you made a good summary, Mr. Budney. Just a little bit of background. This past summer it was pretty hectic for a while. We had numerous breaks, sometimes multiple breaks, and Dallas Drive was no different. So the commission, we talked about it. I went out and got some emergency quotes on it. I received 2. Campo is lower of the 2. So the commission decided at their last meeting to recommend awarding the lowest proposal to them. Now we still have to permit it, so it's still going to be it's on schedule, but we still have to go through the permitting process. So we still have we're still a few months out from doing that.
It's nice we have 2 contractors that we've dealt with.
Yes.
We'd be comfortable with either their performance.
Yes.
And that's thanks again to the DPS Commission and the work you've been doing, and our staff. Madam Clerk, did you have?
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with Campo Brothers. I mean, obviously they are doing an incredible amount of work on the island.
Yes.
And part of that is because they're very competent. And but also I just want to point out, like every time Ted and I go through the checks, the bills, we see that for water main repair, it's not just the actual water main repair, it's the restoration, it's all the other small, that all adds up to the high cost. And so the sooner we can eliminate the need, the need for repairing old and replacing it with new, I think the better. So.
Uda, to further emphasize that, this job will include replacing the pipe, 350 feet, replacing a copper water service, curb stop and box, fire hydrant assembly, 6-inch water main connection, and restoration. That's what goes into this. It's not just fix a busted pipe.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yeah, Lorenda, have you done the financials on this to anticipate we have the money to do this?
Yes, I already consulted with Ann.
Obviously, most of these replacements are not budgeted, but we feel we have enough money in.
Yes, we do. And we have also money in the bond proceeds.
It's a good question, Ted, and just like the sources that we looked at for the Park Lane job, within those sources we have money for this.
Other questions, comments for Ms. Beneteau? None offered. Those in favor of awarding the lowest proposal for the Dallas Drive water main replacement to Campo Brothers Incorporated, the amount of $47,535, based upon the recommendation of the DPS Commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered?
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Beneteau. And, Township winter tax levy. All been waiting for this one.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ted.
Not me. I just collect it.
This is
He assesses it.
Yeah. Okay.
I was trying to deflect.
Thanks. Recommend that the Grosse Township Board of Trustees resolve that there be levied on the taxable value of the township for the year 2018 winter billing a tax of 10.9137 mils on the taxable value thereof, said value being $606,287,567.
Support.
Okay, moved by Supervisor, seconded by Trustee Budney. This is just business. We have to. The board has to approve the winter tax levy, and the forms have to go to Wayne County, eventually to the state. And Margie's recap is the millage rate is being calculated using a millage reduction fraction. That's otherwise known as a Headley millage reduction fraction. The Headley Amendment was passed by the voters of the state of Michigan in 1978, which requires that the local unit of government to reduce its millage when annual growth on existing property is greater than the rate of inflation. With the passage of Proposal A in 1994, the growth on existing property is impacted by the uncapping of taxable value due to a transfer on a property. The uncapping has caused the taxable values to increase, in most cases greater than the rate of inflation. Hence the Headley reduction. Should the millage be for improvements, and this goes on, should the millage for improvements to roads within Grosse Township pass on November 6th, 2018, revised 4029 must be submitted. The 4029 is the list of millages. Must be submitted to Wayne County prior to the preparation of the 2018 winter tax roll. Require a special meeting of the board. So the quick recap is, these are your winter taxes. The taxes we're going to levy. Headley Headley was a good idea at the time. I think I've approached this before, but it's killing us. It's killing every community in the state and trying to recoup in our case, 20% reduction in funding we got hit with in about 2010. We're still struggling with it, but this is what is being levied, and it's up to the board to approve it and up to the treasurer to mail out your notices. So, questions from the board, Madam Clerk?
Well, just a sideline to point out that except for the allocated millage, all of these millages have been voted by the residents of Grosse Ile. They're basically self-imposed.
Yep. Good point. Other questions, comments? With that, with none offered, those in favor of resolving that there be levied on the taxable value of the township for the year 2018 winter tax billing a tax of 10.9137 mils on the taxable value, said value being $606,287,567. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? It will be so levied. Action item number 5, Mr. Bletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I am moving for the appointment of Deputy Chief Mark Warnick to the position to be the next police chief for the Township of Groseal. Specifically, to appoint Mark Warnick to the full-time at-will position of police chief at the salary rate of $88,000, effective January 1, 2018.
I will support it. So moved by Trustee Bletcher, second by Supervisor.
History on this, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Bletcher, could I just, before we start?
Please.
Since this got to be such a hot topic before, and I know you love my history lessons, but basically this is a topic up for discussion. Until the board makes a vote, don't assume you know how the vote will go. But it had to be added to the agenda in order for the township board to be able to discuss it in an open session. It could have been brought to the agenda by any board member. It could have been voted down, as you know. It could have come as a study session or a discussion item, but in this format it came as an action item. And at this point the board has an opportunity to discuss a topic up or down. And so I would not, I would like you not to think that foregone conclusions have been made.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Again, Mr. Bletcher.
Thank you, Madam Clerk and Mr. Supervisor. This action history and purpose is simple. It'll allow the township to move forward in the process of filling vacancies within the police department. Township Board has previously accepted the retirement of Chief Porcerelli. Deputy Chief Mark Warnick has been in that position as recommended by the Police Commission since July. Mr. Warnick is next in the line of succession, and I ask that that be confirmed tonight.
Well, we can pick up where we left off on the discussion. Mr. Treasurer.
Some of the discussion and some of the anger that took place here tonight was, this was kind of a last-minute thing, even for some of the board members. And there are some reservations. We all have reservations when you start making moves of this type. I feel that Deputy Chief Warnick has been vetted by the commission. If something were to happen, or with Joe leaving, the biggest problem, the biggest thing you'd have to convince me is why he wouldn't be chief, not whether he deserves to be chief, because we've already put him in the position to fill that position. So reluctantly, I would like to have had some more time with this, but I understand the urgency that's being placed on it. I've sat on commissions that have been circumvented by boards, and as the chair of those commissions, I was not a happy camper, but I also realize that my job as a liaison or a chair to a board is at the will of the board. We just make recommendations. So I'm certainly glad we've got an officer like Mark Warnick to fill that position. I'm extremely sorry that Joe has chose to leave. I think he's made my family and myself safe for a number of years, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure Mark will do the same thing. And I would urge you to support it. The only question I would have for you is the position of deputy chief open to anyone that applies, or is vetted by the commission, or how do you plan on moving forward with that?
The Police Commission discussed that at the last meeting, and we are proposing, and in fact I requested that we have the deputy chief and the chief considered forthwith, and we have every interest in moving forward. I would like to see the Police Commission make a recommendation within the next 2 weeks. And that way all the information can, again, come to the board. And I'd like to see interviews scheduled and forthwith, so that we can then have the deputy chief position resolved, and then we can move back to the lieutenant going in a line of succession. So I would hope that the commission would be able to have a meeting, Ted, within the next 2 weeks.
When is our next meeting?
Board meeting? 22nd.
22nd.
I would suggest that you give them a little more than 2 weeks, being as though we have more than 2 weeks
Right.
to go. As
So-
much time as it takes, but I'd like it in front of us, at least some action in front of us by the next board meeting, if that's okay.
If I can just add on to the treasurer's comments, we have 3 board meetings between now and January 1st. So while it sounds on a calendar like it's a long time, this board meets 3. If we have a special meeting, it will be for the changing the tax levy. But we have 3 board meetings to make decisions that are going to affect the township for a long time. So while it seems like a long time, however many days, it's the 3 board meetings that are the limiting factor.
And Ted, to further explain it, the reason for the 2 weeks is our next meeting, I believe, is the 9th. And we would like to have a process there where we can make a recommendation so that the township board has an understanding of who the candidates were and what the final selection recommendation to the board is.
Yeah, this is important enough. I wouldn't be opposed to having.
Hello, I'm Angela Secokis.
That's from the board. Madam Clerk?
Actually, which raises a question I have for our attorney. So in the past, I was always under the impression that other board members in large numbers were not necessarily invited to other commission meetings because of the Open Meetings Act. You know, the fact that if 4 board members show up at a different meeting, it might constitute some sort of a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
It's only a violation of the Open Meetings Act if there's deliberation by the members present. So it would be the same as, attending a Christmas party or some sort of other event. I'm sure all of you are here for Island Fest. So that wouldn't be a violation.
So
as a general principle, it's typically encouraged that board members, not other than a liaison that's appointed by the board, not participate in or with the meeting for obvious reasons. And I think we've gone over that in the past. So does that answer your question?
So basically, yeah, when people mentioned how many board members attended, our rule, if we attend, is really as part of the audience or as an observer.
Sure, absolutely. As long as there's no
no
standard
debate,
is whether or
no
not there's
debate or-
deliberations, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Assorti. Other questions, comments?
Yes.
Mr. Budney?
As you know, I'm against this. I'm amazed. Mr. Zelasco, with all his management experience, Mr. Mike Jarecki, with all his management experience. I myself have 30 years of upper executive management experience, and it just isn't the right way to do this. And there is no compelling reason to do it. I understand the thought process. I understand that Joe is leaving, and that in a nice world, Joe wouldn't leave until everybody's mentored and we know we have the right people. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to fill these positions no matter what. If Joe were to leave tomorrow, where would you be? Quite frankly, even with the 98 days or whatever it is, you don't have that lieutenant's going to have less than that. The deputy, if this goes through, the deputy will have less than that, and you're promoting somebody that we, the board, don't know other than by title. You go, theoretically he'd be next in line, but we don't know how he's performed. And that's a very important factor in making a decision. The other thing that Mike Jarecki made a very good point of, and it appears we don't want to listen to it, is the vetting for deputy chief and what you're looking for in a deputy chief is much different than what you'd be looking for a chief. It's a different job, a much different job. And it's necessary, if you're going to do it right, it's necessary that you set up your process correctly and go through that process. To not have any process, which is what we're doing here, is absolutely wrong. And my anger earlier on, and it's still there, I'm holding it down a little, is because I know this is the wrong way to do it. It's absolutely the wrong way to do this. And going through the process, if Mike comes out, or Mark comes out the choice, that's wonderful. But we'll have done that on a process. Instead, right now it appears some people made a decision on this, not the whole board. The whole board wasn't involved in it. And I'm not talking about the whole board being together. I mean, the whole board wasn't called one at a time even to be let known about this. It's dropped on us at, I forget what time I walked in here. It was after 7 o'clock, and I look down in front of me and see the action item. And now you want me to vote a couple hours later, with everything that's happened, to do one of the most important department head jobs on this island. I mean, I don't know anybody out there that would think this is the right process. I just, it just defies me, other than I keep hearing this is what we want to do. Guys, think a little. Please think a little. Remember, you're doing this for the community, not for you, not for the board, not for the township. You're doing this for the community. And it was also pointed out, and I think it's going to be there, if this is plowed through, you're setting a terrible example, and you're sending a message to the police department and the police commission.
Thank you, Mr. Buddy. Other comments from the board?
In response to the need to have this delayed, or the request to have it delayed, with all due respect, I understand the arguments. We happen to have a difference of opinion regarding timing, but I look at the fact that this officer has been involved in training for this position. I'd like to believe that it is every officer's belief that one day when they start with the department, they can ultimately be chief. This officer has worked very hard. He has an unblemished record. He is greatly respected within the department. He's respected by the chief, and he is ready to work. And the question is, are we going to put all of those almost 3 decades of service to work with a chief that has 98 days to bring him on, and to work with a deputy chief and a lieutenant? Or are we going to just sit and wring our hands because we have a disagreement about what you refer to as a process? It is a process, and it's been in process for over 27 years. He's ready. Bring him on board. Let him get the benefit of Joe's training and wisdom and knowledge. We have a budget that starts in January where he's going to be working with that. And I don't want Mark Warnick to come in on the 29th or the 30th or the 31st day of December and having to start getting his arms wrapped around that. We have all kinds of state and federal requirements when it comes to forfeiture funds. We have training, we have liability, we have a number of issues. It's a complicated department to run. There is no reason to believe that Mark Warnick cannot do it, but I want to make sure that he's given all the tools to succeed. When we interviewed Chief Porcerelli 9.5 years ago for the position, he had concerns because we had both the chief and the deputy chief retire at the same time. And Chief Porcerelli looked at it and said, I'm coming in and having to learn an awful lot very fast. I'm not going to fail. Mark Warnick is not going to fail. Chief Porcerelli reiterated he did not want to be set up for failure. I don't believe that Mark Warnick is being set up for failure if we give him the tools to go forward with. And the biggest tool in the toolbox is Joe Porcerelli. Let him do his job. We have differences within the commission. I've made a proposal to this board. It's in the form of a motion. Give him the tools to succeed. That's why I'm bringing this tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bletcher. Madam Clerk?
I would just like to add to what Carl said. The second biggest tool in the toolbox is time, and that is what we're trying to do. I would not have voted to promote Mark Warnick to deputy chief if I did not think he had all the capabilities of at some point assuming the role of chief, because I believe in the real world deputies do grow up to be the chiefs, and they are assigned as deputies in order to be in place if something happens to the chief. I have a deputy clerk. If something happens to me, I have a second in command, someone who takes my place. And so I have full confidence, regardless of all the things that have been said here that actually ironically undermine the people who serve us. I believe Mark Warnick will do a fabulous job, and that's why he is the deputy chief.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Other comments from the board? All right. I think we've pretty much covered this.
You have to wait.
All right. With that, I'll do another roll call vote. Those in favor of appointing Mark Warnick to the full-time at-will position of police chief at the salary rate of $88,000 effective January 1st, 2018, we will signify in a roll call vote with an aye. January 1st. So noted. January 1st, 2019. Thank you. We'll go roll call vote. And once again, I'll start with Trustee Bletcher.
Aye.
Trustee Nelson?
Aye.
Madam Clerk?
Aye.
Supervisor, aye. Mr. Treasurer?
Aye.
And Trustee Budney?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Just as a quick closing comment on it, or maybe not be the closing, but Deputy Chief Warnick, thanks for stepping up. Joe, make sure he's ready. And the commission, thanks for giving us good candidates. Trustee Bletcher, thank you. Action item. 6. Trustee Bletcher yet again.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is my motion for authorization to establish an eligibility list for police officer with the Groseal Township.
Okay, moved by Trustee Bletcher, and so Supervisor will second.
Mr. Supervisor, the Groseal Police Department would like to advertise and establish an eligibility list to fill a future vacancy in the department. Chief Porcerelli is retiring on December 31, 2018. With his retirement, we will be short an officer. This is not an authorization to hire. It is an authorization to solicit applications for would-be officers.
Question, comments among the board? With that?
I was just going to, catching my voice. I agree that this is something we've done before, and I think this is something important to keep moving forward.
And that will take time also. With that, other comments? Those in favor of, let's see, what is the actual motion? Recommend the Township Board approve and advertise and accept applications for the position of police officer and establishing the eligibility list. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None offered. Thank you once again. That concludes my agenda. Concludes tonight's agenda items. If I could find my agenda. Got it.
Actually concludes our action.
Our action items. Thank you.
Because I'd like to go.
I don't think we're going to get. With that, clerk's report. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just 3 short items, unless Brian has something to add. The last day to register to vote for the November 6, 2018 general election is coming up fast. It's October 9th. Absentee ballots are now available, and we hope to have them in the mail by the end of the week. If you want an absentee voter ballot, please contact the clerk's office by email or by call, or come on in. And if you, there you go. If you need an absentee ballot, please contact our office for an application. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Treasurer.
It was a lot more fun last week when I was on vacation.
It usually is.
The August financial report are not yet available. They should be available by the next board meeting, but you can go online, my website, see where all of our investments are and how much we've got invested in each account. The Treasurer's Office has been very busy collecting summer taxes from mortgage companies and individuals that were due by September 14th, 2018. We continue to accept summer tax payments with a 1% penalty and then an additional 1% per calendar month until March 2019. Please note that the Public Service Credit Union cannot accept tax payments. That's their rule. Late tax payments, I'm sorry. Property owners who have mortgage escrow accounts can check online at grosshill.com to ensure that their 2018 summer tax payment was made by their mortgage company. As of September 24th, 2018, we've collected 94% of the 2018 summer roll. Distribution to the schools and the counties have taken place in a timely fashion. We have a Commerce Park meeting on the 21st of October. We'd encourage you to come listen to what's happening at your airport. And Mark, thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Trustee liaison reports. Mr. Budney, please.
Thank you, Brian. Very quickly, October 9th, the second Tuesday of the month, DPS meeting, very important. We're having an open house to discuss the road millage as we drive around. Very few smooth, easy, nice driving roads on the island. We believe, the commission believes, this is a very important millage. It's open not only for you to hear why the commission wants the millage, but also, very importantly, to hear from you with any thoughts or ideas that you have. ZBA, as usual, very quickly, nothing. I think we've had 3 this year, so we're on a roll. And one last comment, and this is my comment personally. It's not the rest of the board. This is just me talking as a trustee. I feel so deeply that the actions that have been taken tonight are so totally wrong that I want to apologize to the chief, to the commission, to the union, and to the members of the police department for what took place here tonight and the way that was rushed through.
Thank you, Mr. Budney. Chief, do you want to give us an update on your department?
October 7th, open house, noon to 4. So the fire wives got it all handled. It's called span of control. So
excellent.
And then our run base course right now is still running heavy. Sunday we ran 5. We did some back-to-backs. We're on track for somewhere between 650 and 700 responses this year. So.
Thanks, Chief. Mr. Nelson.
Yes, I'd like to give Miss O'Farrell's report tonight. She had to leave early to pick up her daughter. The next CRC, which is the Community Recreation Committee meeting, is Thursday, September 27th at 6 o'clock in this room. Water's Edge is now accepting full/winter storage contracts at the marina. Paint the Town Red is this weekend. Haunted Hangar event, October 27th. Tickets on sale at groseal.com. Fall Festival is October 13th from 1 to 4 at Centennial Farm, $5 per person. Includes hay rides, petting farm, children's crafts, cider donuts, pumpkin patch, face painting, children's games. Fall rates at Water's Edge begin today. Regular golfer, $10 for 9 holes, $14 for 9 holes with a cart. Senior, age 62 plus and student, 17 and under, $8 for 9 holes, $12 for 9 holes with a cart. Like to follow us on Facebook? GirlsvilleRecreation.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. And Mr. Bletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. 2 reports, one on open space greenways. The township manager has been presented with negotiations to purchase a lot that will regain trail access for what's popularly known as the Ferry Trails. That is the area between Ferry and Gage Roads. That will provide an access trail as a direct link. So that is open space greenways. We expect to have something finalized in October. And regarding police, it is with extreme regret I have to report that our chairman, Joe Dixon, is going to be resigning from the commission for reasons that are very personal, known to many of us, but very personal and involve a tremendous commitment he is making to family. Joe is going to be very greatly missed. It is a necessary thing that he believes is required because he's not going to be able to attend all of the meetings that he feels necessary to attend, and that's part of his job. Joe has been a very, very important factor and force on the commission. He does a very good job. He's going to be greatly missed, and I would hope that everyone that runs into Joe and his wife Beth takes time to thank her for sharing him with us, and to thank Joe for all of the wonderful work that he has done and all the untold hours that he has put in. Personally, I have worked with Joe when we had issues involving environmental remediation with the old space that we had in the gun range. And I called Joe on a Tuesday and said, would like to have you tell us, because you were in the business of environmental remediation, what has been done with that building before we tried to do anything with that. And he said, Carl, I'm going to Florida on Friday on business, and I will get back to you. And I had a phone call from Joe the next day. That's the kind of guy that he is. That's the kind of dedication that Joe has brought to the community. He has brought to the commission, and he's going to be greatly missed. And I just want to thank him for everything that he's done.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks. With that, let's see, Mr. Cerny, you have completed. I mean,
yeah, I just had one final thought as I'm sitting here and looking out at all the people that I've worked with for a number of years on the commission and the officers. I look forward to filling the lieutenant position. As Jim has said, we have a process. We have had disagreements, and the disagreement is largely right now, as I see it, is filling it in a logical, progressive order. And we do need to have some resolution to language that remains a stumbling block. But I will say I have a huge amount of respect for Mr. Pelland. I don't know how other than to convey it, except to say, Ken, you have done absolutely everything we have asked you to do. You've done a great job, and it is with a great amount of emotional and physical pain that I go through this. But I believe that the process is that we should fill these top positions first and then fill the lieutenant position. I do not consider any of this to be a reflection on you. I have been to the DARE programs and see the response that you get from the children and from the parents. I've been to the Stepping Stone programs that you've had, the fundraisers and the work that you do, and I know that you have been a huge force in that. You told me one time that there was a young man that was involved in Stepping Stone, 7 years old, with severe autism, had never spoken a word in his life. You patched him up, matched him up with a horse, and he was riding around the arena, and his parents had never heard him speak a word. The horse in front of him lifted his tail and did what horses do best when they lift their tail, and you advised me that that young man's first word in 7 years was poop. and his parents were overwhelmed. That's the kind of guy that you are, Ken. And I do find this very, very difficult physically and emotionally, but we're going to get through it. And it is with a tremendous amount of respect that I have for you and for your family. And I say that with as much of a thank you as I can. You do a great job. I'm looking forward to getting the lieutenant position resolved, and I look forward to working with you. You're a good man. You're a great man. Thank you. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Pledger. All right, with that, we'll move on to Attorney's Report. Mr. Sorty?
I have a question for Mr. Sorty. I want to make sure here there's nothing new to report or that the board should know about. Possibly not here at this meeting, but is there something new the board should know about? On case 17-008386-CZ. I think we know, we were told to use that number rather than saying who it is. Have you heard from Mr. Ferran? How's that?
Yes, I've heard from Mr. Ferran.
Is there anything that the board, I mean, and not now necessarily, but is there something the board should know?
Yeah, if any of you have any questions, I'm going to meet with you after the meeting and be happy to answer any questions where we are with the status. So
Because I heard the status has possibly changed somewhat and that we haven't been informed of it. And I'd like to know if it has, why not? So I'll be asking you that.
You may more, I believe I've been on all the emails that everybody else has been on and the status. So I'll be happy to talk to you about it
No, this
later.
wasn't on any of our emails.
I can tell you that I haven't received any emails that the board hasn't been included on.
Okay.
But
if that's the
if
case,
there is
then-
something, I'd be happy to talk to you about it and make sure we get to the bottom of it first thing.
Well, if there is something, do we need a closed session? I mean, obviously,
No,
Trustee
all I'm
Budney knows something we don't know.
No,
So,
all I'm asking is there something else? That's all I was asking.
well,
I had let me put a lid on this. I had a phone call with Mr. Ferran this afternoon. He was sending me documentation. I haven't received it yet. It may show up tomorrow that we could elaborate on. If you received information, I'm curious as to what your source was, because I don't think Mr. Ferran contacted anybody else. He contacted me. So if you received information from another source, I'd like to know what that is.
Thank
happy
you,
to talk
Tom.
to you after.
Thank you,
Okay.
Tom.
and all I'm saying is that if it involves litigation, then the board should know and we should have a closed session to discuss it.
That's my point exactly.
Well, I don't have the documentation.
Yeah,
so
and the question was, has there been something that's been passed down to us? Because I did hear something.
And then again, my question remains, there is a chain of custody for these events, and I'm curious as to what the chain of custody seems to be now. But with that, let me, Township Manager, Mr. Rim.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and the board. I'd like to update everyone regarding last week's construction work. The previous meeting, we reported the East River Road project from Grosio Parkway to Stout was going to be undertaken by Wayne County. And coming on and off the island, I saw the lineup of trucks, and because of the weight limit on the bridge, they would come over. So that added to some inconvenience, but because of the county restriction and the requirement, and I understand their weighmaster was also stopping and checking their trucks to make sure that everything was within compliance, and it was. So the temporary closures we had were to get the equipment on and off, because they had to offload it from the heavy trucks and then bring it over themselves. So that is been completed. Some of you may have noticed near the sled hill, there's a very large pile of millings. That is from the East River project. There's some West River Road DPS items over there as well. Wayne County intends to reuse that on gravel roads. So they were able to take that material, repurpose it, and not have to haul, increase traffic, increase wear and tear, et cetera, on the bridge. So that's what's behind that.
That does, considering that that's ground up asphalt and petroleum, does that result in any kind of an environmental risk being there?
Not to my knowledge. It is their millings from their roads that they repurpose, and they do that rather consistently, I understand. So, okay. Yeah, I believe at that point it is. So, West River Road, if they didn't begin pavement today with the weather, I think they're getting ready to. Is that correct? Any moment now. And to remind the board, it's been a while since we talked about this, the Great Lakes Water Authority and long-term contract. There's what I call the Great Lakes Water Authority subcommittee to the DPS, which is made up of Trustee Budney, Treasurer Van Oss, Supervisor Loftus, the Chairman Kostick of the DPS Commission, the Commissioner Kennedy, myself, Lorinda, DPS Director, and engineering and legal support. We've been meeting, reviewing all our options, discussing with Great Lakes Water. We had a detailed meeting with them last month, and our consultants are working on some items with Great Lakes Water Authority, and our intention is, as a committee, have a study session with the Township Board in October. And I'll be working with the clerk and supervisor office. I guess part of me bringing this up is just to refresh memories, but our next meeting is the 22nd. Due to schedules, we only have one meeting that month, and I really didn't think it made sense to try to add another date. So my intention is to bring it forward on October 22nd. So that would be a study session prior to the meeting where the entire DPS Commission and the board can talk about the status of Great Lakes Water Authority and entering into a long-term contract with them.
So you leave enough time.
So, yeah, how much time do you think that may take, Mr.
I think
Treasurer?
you're going to need a couple hours.
Yeah.
A lot of detail.
So, yep, could be. So, with that, I have nothing else to add, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ream. It's been a couple weeks. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I'll start out with just some announcements and some informative stuff from Margie, basically. Start out with the Antique Roadshow Dumichelle appraisers. This wickers into three items. Dumichelle appraisers provide an estimate for value up to 2 items for a donation of $25,000 to the Historical Society. Be held at Centennial Farm on Saturday, October 6th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Appointment details are on grosseal.com, and there are some flyers in the back of the room. I bring this up because the weekend after that is Dump the Junk, so before you start lining up all your stuff for Dump the Junk, if you think it has value, you might take it to the Dumichelle and see if it has any value. This is just a public service. And then on the same vein, if you can't get somebody else to buy it and it's a hazardous waste, Dump the Junk will not accept it. Wayne County, I've mentioned this before, but Wayne County on Saturday, November 3rd, 2018, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Wayne County Community College District, 2100 North Line in Taylor, has their hazardous waste collection, and they take just about everything. It's we're giving you 3 options to get rid of stuff, so that's all I can do there. Rotary, Kim talked a good deal about what's going on with Festival and Rec and how they're interacting with DDA. We're also getting a great partner in Grosse-Ile Rotary. Asked me to advise you the Purple Gangs hit on polio at the historic Detroit Yacht Club Sunday, October 14th from 2 to 6. Dressed in your 20s finest, hors d'oeuvres, full cash bar, music from the 20s and more. And there's a flyer for that. If you haven't been to the Detroit Yacht Club, it's a beautiful historic structure. Polio was almost eradicated. It was eradicated in this country, almost worldwide. And then people stopped vaccinating, and there it is. It's back. So this will be raising funds to increase that effort worldwide to, once again, attempt to eradicate polio. Senior Oktoberfest Luncheon, Wednesday, October 24th, 12:30, Centennial Farm, $10 per person. Nature and Land, again, another partner in improving Grosse-Ile Township. open house of the Detroit River International Wildlife Area, the Gibraltar Bay Unit, every Sunday through October 28th from 1 to 4, and that's down by the airport entrance. It's really a neat little hideaway back there. All right, what have I been doing? Most of my princely salary seems to be go to fundraisers. The Island Nights was a cruise that was set up to introduce the community to the Bird Lady, Betty King's replacement. It's the Outback Wildlife Rehab Center. It was a fundraiser to get them on their feet. Betty King, as most of us remember, if you had an injured bird, if you found an injured animal, she was the one who could nurse it back to health. She's no longer able to do that, and this organization will be taking over. It was great fun. Following night was at the Guidance Center's 60th anniversary. I was really pleased at the number of Grosse Ile residents who were there. It seemed like about half the people were friends and neighbors, probably closer to 20%, but Grosse Ile's support of it. I've talked to the chief about their kids' talk and what it does to keep kids out of court and let their stories be told. It was a great evening. Emergency management, Chief Murdoch and I are head-to-head on this. How are we going to protect our community? Deputy Chief Warnick attended us. I think it was probably your first meeting with this group. And the chief points out, and Mr. Sturdivant, Grosse Ile Township has the only support emergency response plan of the 43 communities in Wayne County. This emergency response plan, I got to thank all the department heads and the board that allowed us to get this response plan through. It's the only viable one in Wayne County of the 43 communities. This opens the door to federal funding in the event of a disaster. It's critically important that this stays updated. Chief Murdoch is the main Office of Primary Responsibility. There's a good military term I haven't used. The OPR. I'm here to support him. And, of course, the police are half of the public safety team. So we're doing well. We're leading the department, and I offered to Mr. Sturdivant that you could certainly use ours as a template to help another community. We want to get in all of Wayne County on board in this. And speaking of Wayne County, I attended a Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber breakfast this morning. The speaker was Warren Evans. He was focused on improvements throughout the county, not just Detroit, and transportation. But I had the pleasure of sitting mostly with representatives from the Beaumont system, primarily our manager from the Beaumont system here. And I know nothing about running hospitals, but for those of you, they're putting a lot of dollars into improving the Beaumont South Shore, and their biggest improvement is going to be in their OBGYN section. So for those of you who are still in that line of work, they're dumping, I think not dumping, they're putting $9 million improvements into their OBGYN. It's just good stuff to know because that is our first stop generally on responses off the island. So the dust sort of settled on the McLouth hearing. And unfortunately, that meeting got almost out of control. It was a public hearing for comments. Almost everybody who spoke had his own idea of what he or she wanted to see at the McLouth site. None of them were interested in coughing up any money to make that happen. The EPA has two levels of remediation: residential, non-residential. There's no mixed use remediation. There's no temporary use remediation. There are two standards, and the standard they're looking for is non-residential. Mayor Stack closed or had the final comment in the meeting and wrapped up the situation well, and I have her permission to read it. I think it's important because the last meeting, the crosshairs were on me because I wasn't beating up McLouth. I wasn't beating up the people at Trenton to put a park or something at the McLouth DSC site. Tonight it's police issues, but it's nice to have the moving crosshairs. But this was Mayor Stack's statement, which quieted the room. And I would like to make a statement instead of a question regarding the public hearing. First, I'd like to begin that in 2011, I was elected to the office of mayor, and in December 2011, I attended my first Brownfield meeting hosted by the Downriver Community Conference. At the end of the meeting, Paula Bowes, who was in charge of the meeting, asked if there were any questions from the group attending. I raised my hand and I yelled, "Help." I then proceeded to ask how we could get help from one of the most contaminated sites, not only in the city of Trenton, but the county of Wayne and the state of Michigan. My city administrator, Jim Wagner, whom I can't say enough thank yous to, began to network and made connections to move this property forward to make it a viable site again. Many more hours have been spent on this site, too many to even count. Jim knew how important it was to me to move forward on getting this site cleaned up and to have it once again a commercial property that could create job and taxes for the community. As the city decided to pass on the purchase of the property, Wayne County, Khalil Rahal and his team from Wayne County Economic Development Corporation moved on presenting to the county commission the importance of this property to the city, county, and state. The commissioners then voted to place the property in the county land bank. Thank you to the commissioners who supported this important move. RFQs were sent out to prospective buyers and interviews were set up by Mr. Rahal, and he included myself and one other staff member to participate in the interviews. 4 companies were invited, but only one could show the financial support needed to proceed with clearing and providing a once damaged piece of property a new chance with a new beginning. That company was Crown Enterprises. You were the company that showed there was true value in this property, and we look forward to seeing major improvements to the site. Many residents and downriverites were skeptical, but myself, along with the unanimous support of the council, are convinced that you will show us that you have truly vested in the community, and it all has started. Thank you to Matthew Maroon, Michael Samhat, and Ron Patty for all your support in this project. I want to thank Steve Kaiser and all of his staff from Region 5 EPA office, and especially to Brian Kelly for all of his work on this project and the Department of Justice for the review and acceptance of the cleanup. I'd like to thank Debbie Dingle for all her help in this project, along with State Representative Darren Camilleri, County Commissioner Joe Palmara, Warren Evans, the County Executive, and Khalil Rahal, Assistant County Executive in the Wayne County Economic Development Corporation. A big thanks goes to Jim Perry, Director, and Paula Bowes of their Downriver Community Conference for all their assistance. The vision is coming. To see the place that will no longer have these huge dilapidated buildings, to see huge cleanup of the site, to see a new fence and all the weeds gone will be the vision I have to have an entrance to our community that we have all been ashamed of. Thank you to Crown Enterprises for stepping up and believing in our community. We look forward to working with you as a partner in our community. That closed up the meeting, and the audience went silent. That was from the mayor. So those of you who are still fuming about what's going to go on there, that's the statement from the city of Trenton. And one reminder from Angela on our DDA, remind everyone, Paint the Town Red at tonight's meeting. She cannot be here, but hope to see everyone at Paint the Town Red this weekend. The DDA, Rec Department, and Rotary Club have been working very hard to put on a great homecoming event. We have live entertainment planned for both nights. Food provided by the Rec Department on Friday night. Now on Saturday night, we'll have food trucks plus local fare. For Friday after the game, be showing a family-friendly movie, A Wrinkle in Time. Lastly, Saturday from 11 to 4, come down to meet local business owners and community groups at our Little Tent Village. All weekend festivities will be on Macomb Street at Lions Park or across the street at Fifth Third Bank. That's good news. These flyers are still available, all the DDA stuff. Angela's supposed to give that, but again, couldn't be here. I've talked enough. That concludes my supervisor's report. And now, once again, we'll open to public comment. 3 minutes, you know the rules, and I'll invite Mr. Anderson back. Mr. Anderson.
Well, just to close out, I know someone said the amount of experience on the police commission from industry. I've been in the auto industry 51 years. The last 2 as a plant manager in Rouge and as chief engineer in staff. So, I know what politics are like. And unfortunately, tonight was an example of politics for whatever agenda or reason, I have no idea. I'm still trying to get the lay of the land here. But the sad thing is, this didn't have to happen. Okay? I mean, 4 of the board members were at our meeting just a week ago. For all the talk about 98 days, 108 days, we're talking about the need to mentor or prepare 2 of our officers that will be stepping up, whoever we decide they are, and if you allow them to be. They got 29 years and 26 years seniority. It's not like they don't know what's going on at the police department. Yes, there's always the idiosyncrasies of one assignment or another, but we're not talking rookies here. And we were talking, and Ted, you brought it up, or Carl, you brought it up. Our next meeting is October 9th. Our commitment to the 4 gentlemen that were at our commission meeting was we'd have an answer by October 9th. And the 4 people that were there did not express the opinion that that wasn't acceptable. They said, okay, that should be okay. Or at least that's the impression they left. So I don't know why what we watched happen here tonight happened, but it doesn't look good on any of our resumes. And, you know, I think we have a system that works. Carl, I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion at our next commission meeting. You've been there longer than me. Between us, we got 55 or so, 60 years on the police commission. We know how to handle the promotion of people. And Uda, you mentioned the whole thing about, well, if it's a deputy, it's a line of succession, that means it's going to be chief. That is not true. Over the many years that Carl and I have been, there's been at least 2 occasions we've jumped a sergeant over a lieutenant into a deputy chief or chief position. And in the discussion that we had when we were interviewing Warnick and Pelland, in the discussion it was always, well, that makes him automatically the next chief. And it was specifically noted and the point made that that's not true. The next deputy chief is not automatically the chief. The next sergeant is not automatically the next lieutenant. The next lieutenant is not automatically the deputy chief. I mean, you can determine that, but from our process, history is that's not the way it works. Now,
I'm going to limit you to 3 minutes.
Just my closing statement.
Closing comments.
Closing comment. I don't have a problem with any one of you people. I don't know how you put up with this crap myself. But now you made me lose my train of thought, and that's just terrible. I don't have a problem with any of you. You've got the right to appoint anyone you damn well please to any commission or whatever in any organization. That's in our or township rules, our policies, whatever. So you had the right to do what you did tonight. There's no argument from me. But generally as a commission, if you let us know what you want, we usually give it to you. No one gave us a shot at this. And, you know, I'm still struggling with why this happened tonight. Didn't have to.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Public comment? No, I'm sorry, Mr. Heil.
Bill Heil, East River Road. Brian, the reason I was so eager to jump up here on the first question is I was actually thinking about McLeod. I've got a question, and that was why I thought it would be a good segue. But I've got a copy here of a letter that I think Dale originated back on the 24th to a man at the, this print's a little small, Wayne County Land Bank. And the position on the letter seems to say, on one hand, we certainly support the effort that is going on with Crown Enterprises and with the Maroons in Trenton to make progress with the use of the property. The next paragraph says we're certainly also wanting to affirm that we would like this land to be dedicated to a mixed-use purpose. I see a conflict there. Do we have a position on this now? I know that we had a resolution back in 2001 that said we supported mixed use. Are we supporting mixed use?
That decision is made by Trenton's Planning Commission. I
But
mean,
we have passed a resolution to support it in the
right
past.
now we're at the point of what is going to be the level of remediation. Again, there's only two choices. There's residential, non-residential. What happens if it's remediated to what Crown Enterprises expects to non-residential? It cannot have mixed use if it involves residential. So
I know that.
So it doesn't matter what anybody resolves. What level is it going to be remediated to? Residential, non-residential.
I'm not in that position, Brian. Isn't that what I was trying to communicate? What I'm saying is this. We took a position back around about 2001. At that particular point, Mr. Maroon's organization owned about 76 acres. They wanted to create a terminal, a logistics terminal. I understand that SEMCOG did a review of those plans, and at that time, they projected that there would be roughly 2 very long trains a day that would be shuttling in and out of here per day, and an extra 300 trucks per day. And our people at the time, our representatives here, your equivalents, were concerned about what are we going to do when a bridge opens up and a boat goes through, or what are we going to do about the extra long delays because of trains, or what are we going to do with 300 trucks? How do we get to work if that bridge opens at 8:30 in the morning and we're trying to go somewhere to work? Well, now we're looking here at a proposal that basically, I know a decision hasn't been made, but you don't ask a leopard to be a tiger. And you don't ask a guy that's big on logistics to build apartments. This piece of property is going to be roughly triple the size of the original, whatever it was, 70 some odd acres. Well, if you take and triple the output of that, and you go from 300 trucks to 900 trucks and 6 trains a day, I don't know that that will happen. But what I'm saying is, this board, in representing Grosse Ile, can't wait for these other decisions to be made. Because if you commit to the one, which is going to be industrial, and they go this way, we have concerns here about our quality of life.
Let me just get this back to the surface of this planet. We don't have a say in it. We can make any recommendation we want, but it belongs to the city of Trenton to make their decisions. We're only at the remediation phase. What happens after that will be the time for public comment on. But they are not going to remediate to residential standards. They're not going to remediate to residential standards.
What is the position of our board then on this? Are we still favoring mixed use as we have in the past?
It's premature, Bill, to do that. We don't know what they're going to do with the property.
Okay, thank you. And I understand this. I needed to hear it twice. I'm not trying to, I'm not kidding you.
Nope. And I'll just, Mr. Heil spoke at the public hearing in a very reasoned manner, one of the few, I might add. So your presence was appreciated, Bill.
Now, let me just say this again, because there's something here.
Closing comments, Bill.
Yeah, I'll try to close about it. I need to make this clear. What we decide to we have a responsibility here. It's why you're in the meetings, Brian. You can have Riverview and Trenton, and they decide the zoning. But the consequences of their choices impact us. And if their choices lead to a bunch of ships coming down here, our quality of life is impacted, and we have under law rights, and it's my opinion that those rights should be investigated and asserted. That's the bottom line as clearly as I can respect it. At this point, I'm hearing that we have no position, even though we created that letter a long time ago that said we wanted mixed use. Am I clear on that?
You're clear, except that I'm not sure what, not owning the property, I'm not sure what our rights are other than the things I requested was control of...
I can answer that, okay? I want you to pretend that you and I live next door to each other. You, in a way, have no rights over my property, just like we live next door to Trenton. But if I'm playing my music very loudly and you don't like it, you have a right to call a police officer, and that officer can say, you're disturbing his peace and tranquility, turn your machine down. That's a right that you have.
That's a legal right you have if a statute allows it.
We have statutes, I believe, on the books that, and I'm not saying there are statutes, that give us those kinds of rights, too, for our quality of life and what our neighbor does.
Well, if you will point them out to me,
I'll try to get
state
that
statutes,
researched if you want that.
Point them out to me.
But when they're running all those railroad trains through there and you can't get to work, in my mind, that's a comparison to this boom box I was trying to use.
The railroad issue. I petitioned Debbie Dingle to consider. We've had this conversation about the domain, the preemptive rights the railroads have.
Sure, yeah, that's important stuff.
The state cannot impinge on that. And I asked her to take to Congress, why not return those decision-making authorities from the federal level to the states? There was no interest in Congress in returning those rights to the states where local decisions could be made. That's where we stand.
Well,
Way
I'm
beyond my pay grade
right,
as a township supervisor.
At this point, as I'm hearing this, there's not been much thought or attention given to these kinds of issues. And you're saying that even though we spent lots of money fighting these kinds of things back in 2001, we're not prepared to do anything about it now, right? That's what you're saying?
Let's wait. Let's get through the first phase, which is the remediation. Then it goes to zoning. So we make our point.
I'll let it go. I know.
We'll be talking about this more. If you want a township-wide resolution to tell Mayor Stack she can't have anything, it's not going to come from me. We don't have a say or much of a say in what they're planning on doing. If it affects us, if there's fugitive dust, if there's pollution, yes, we can impact it.
I don't want to take too much time here, but I'd like to just throw one more idea out. Wayne County, with the airport, Metro, and I remember this years ago, put in that great big long new runway, one of the longest in the country, and it took roughly 29 years for that to occur. And part of the reason for that was neighboring communities were coming in and holding up progress, if you would, by asking questions like, what will this new runway and the increased air traffic do to our road traffic? What will it do to our quality of life because of the noise from the planes going over?
Bill?
That's those kinds of laws.
Bill, the key to that is we have to know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're going to do yet.
I'm following you. These are valid after you know what's going to happen.
When they say we're going to do this logistical port or whatever, then we know what they're doing. We can look at it. We can see what impact it might have on us. And
then we've got something to talk about.
Then we have something to talk about.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Thanks, Jim. Sergeant Pellin.
I wanted to catch up before Woody got up here. So I understand I have 3 minutes. First thing I wanted to do is thank my family for coming tonight to watch what they thought was going to be a possible promotion to the rank of lieutenant. I obviously disappointed in that faction. I also appreciate the support from the men and women of the Groseal Police Department because they thought that might have been a possibility as well. Second, to the chief. When I first got hired back in 1992, he was my road sergeant. I was able to mentor under him for 5 years. After that, he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. I was in the Detective Bureau, and I mentored under him there for another 20 years. Now that he became the chief of police some 9 years ago, I sat next to him working on asset forfeiture, devising grant programs, and managing the police department from a distance. I've had an opportunity to mentor underneath Chief Porcelli for 26 years, and I appreciate that opportunity. Chief, you did a good job. My 26 years on the police department have been determined for one specific goal. I want to lead these guys and these girls from our department. I want to be a leader. Ms. O'Connor, I know you mentioned something that I declined the deputy chief's position. There was reasons for that, the reasons I declined that, personal reasons, but things change. I've had individual conversations with some members of the township, some members of the police commission, and even the chief, that I do want to move up, whether it's lieutenant, whether it's deputy chief, or chief. I think we need to have a process for that, something that we've done in the past. And this is nothing shorting Mark Warnick, not at all. I've known Mark for those 26 years as well. I've worked alongside him in a variety of different capacities. It's not sliding towards him in the least. However, our men and women deserve to have an opportunity to voice their goals, to show that they have something to strive for. If they want to move up in the department, there's got to be a process. It can't be just something that's thrown on the desk of somebody and that decision made. I don't think it serves our department any justice at all. So I want to just leave that with you guys. I wish there was a process for it. I hope there's a process that's in place for the lieutenant. I was offered the promotion. I accepted the promotion, and for some reason, it was taken off the agenda. That was a few weeks ago. I was nominated again last week, given the impression it was going to be on the agenda, and it didn't make it. I'm not sure if it's a personal reason or if there's something else going on. I don't know. But if there is, I wish somebody would tell me. I really wish somebody would come up and tell me what the issue is. That's all I'm asking. Whether it's in a private meeting, a conversation, or something else, I think I deserve that. Let me know what I need to do or what is wrong so I can correct it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sergeant Pellin. Other comments from the public? Mr. Sorty.
Thomas Sorty, Sarah Lane. You guys know how I feel about business meetings, so I was debating with myself over there whether I should bring this up or not, but I couldn't resist. This is homecoming week. You've mentioned Paint the Town Red. It's becoming an exciting time for the football team. I'll leave it at that. Check it out if you haven't. Hope to see all you guys at the games. We only have 2 home games left. Thanks.
Monroe St. Mary's.
Do you happen to know any of the players personally?
Other comments? Mr. Clark?
Woody Clark, Park Lane. Legal fees.
Legal fees on the warrant list, dated 9/18/2018, in the amount of $3,053 to Thomas Assorti.
Who?
Thomas Assorti.
I got some things here I got off the internet, which are pretty good. DHS report almost 702,000 visas are overstayed. Busted Cory Booker facing ethics investigation. New Jersey Senator Gore has been trying to sabotage President Trump for months. Now he has assumed to be hit with ethics complaint and could ruin his career. Oh, shame, shame. Google has declared war on independent media and in blocking naturalnews.com. Now, they block me. I send out 47 come back. That happens at least 5 to 10 times a day, a week. Is this ladies' room? Obama said I could pee here. That's Johnny. If I ever had a brick for every lie Hillary told, I could build 2 walls. Relax, Nancy, they're banning plastic straws, not plastic surgery. Okay, the difference between 4.1 and 1.4 GDB. I wish the ex-president would get his feet off the desk. If you use plastic straws in our state, you'll go to jail. Jerry Brown. Let me get this straight. Using plastic straws gets you time in jail, but crossing the border illegally gets you sanctuary city and government benefits. Hey, California, what happened if the illegal alien uses a straw in the sanctuary city? Obama didn't care. Hillary didn't care. FBI didn't care. CIA didn't care. DOJ didn't care. MSN didn't care. Democrats don't care about the Russian interference in the elections until Hillary lost. Not a single one. Okay. All right. Obama donated none of his salary. Michelle has a staff of 23. Trump donates all his salary, and Melina has a staff of 4. Now, this lady is the spokeswoman for the Trump, and she takes all the questions about the news people. She says, you back there, shut your bleep hole. Let's see. When you say the guy who said never be president is at your inauguration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The opinions expressed are those of Mr. Clark, not necessarily Grosse Ile Township Board of Trustees. Thanks, Woody. Other comment from the public present? Mr. Zalasko.
I'll try not to use any of the Dale Carnegie skills while I'm up here this time. I'd like to thank Mr. Budney for your support for the police department and everything that took place tonight, and the commission. Joe, I want to publicly thank you, publicly, here tonight. It's been a pleasure working with you. You've done a fantastic job. You have brought so much to this community. I only wish the environment would have been a little better. Maybe you would have stayed a little longer. This is for you.
Thank you, Mr. Zalasko. Other comments? All right, with that, we'll close the public comment, and we have a request for a discussion on a refuse ordinance
amendment.
Mr. Bundy.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, this has come about a number of complaints, and not a large number, but a number of complaints by citizens about people putting their garbage, refuse, whatever, out too early. The reason I'm bringing it forward is because we do send personnel out to look at it, even though we have no ordinance against to what time you put that out. So we're sending somebody out. The clock's ticking. We're paying them, and there's nothing he can do about it. So I just wanted the board to think about possibly putting in an ordinance, and I'm going to just read an example of what it could be like. 167-3.A. Something like no garbage, refuse, yard waste, or recyclable material shall be placed out for collection prior to some period of time, 5 o'clock p.m. of the day before the day it is actually collected. Just something like that. Then, if they get the complaint, at least if our ordinance officer is going out, he actually has something he can work with. And obviously something like that, we're talking about taking it from the foot of the road back to the garage. It could be done that day. It wouldn't be one of these as we, give him a week to do it. No, he does it right away. Again, as I say, I don't believe we've gotten a ton of complaints, but we do get complaints. And in fact, I was asked by one resident to please bring this forward. And my main concern is if we're going to send somebody out, we should at least be able to do something about it, and we really can't. We have to try and finagle something, and we usually don't. So it's a lot of downtime, wasted time by our ordinance officer.
Jim, I think this is so. We started years back on cleaning up the community. We weren't enforcing, or we're not uniformly enforcing a lot of our storage laws. And I think the effort's paid off. The community is, I think, rallied behind this. The place looks a lot better. And thank you, community, for making this happen. We don't have the enforcement capability. You've all shouldered the load. The community does look better. But to have, in the one case that I saw, about 30 yard waste bags that went out. Let's see, the pickup day was Tuesday, so these went out Tuesday afternoon and stayed there till the following Tuesday, and it starts picking up that pungent aroma after a while.
It's the aroma, it's the site, it's everything that goes with it.
It looks like a bunch of junk piled up by the side of the road for way too long. So I would like to see us investigate some kind of, and I'm sure the community, when apprised of what we're doing, why we're doing, I think they'll see the reason for it.
Although not complaining, it does happen. You see it out there if you drive through your area when yours is. You do see people putting it out early, and to a lot of people, that's unsightly, and they don't want to see it. And especially something like that where they put it out. You know, it's one thing to put it out at 10 in the morning rather than 5 at night or that evening for next day collection. But certainly when you're putting out 3, 4, 5 days in advance, it does become nerve-wracking for these neighbors.
It's unsightly.
And
it starts to smell.
Yep.
So I would like to see us investigate that and
yeah, I wanted the thoughts of the board on that, and so whether we should do any more, because basically it would just be coming up with some wording and slipping it in. 167-3 is the nuisance area of the codes, and we could put it in there.
So the next step would be to find a community that's had one that's been tested, and we adopt that one.
We could certainly that there'd be nothing wrong with that.
This is when
I'd be happy to work with you on that. Just as a note, typically, if you have that kind of an ordinance, it's on both sides of putting it out for pickup and collecting it back in.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah. Something simple.
And you're looking at it just from the nuisance perspective?
Well, yeah.
We could look at that.
We don't want to get it out there early. You know, do it when you're supposed to do it. That's all.
Okay. All right. So we're going to make some movement on that. Very good.
And just one, and the thought on this is not that we're certainly, and I'm actually saying this for Lorinda's purpose. It's not that we're going to take an employee and throw them in a car and have them driving around looking for refuse out. But if someone complains, we can actually do something about it. That's the whole purpose.
Thank you. Other comments? None offered? Those in favor? It is 10:14. It's been a busy evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah, support.
I'll give it to Bletcher and Budney. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll call the meeting adjourned at 10:14. Tumultuous evening. Thanks, everyone. See you.